Your attention, please. You're an important part of any disaster response. You may find the following information critical in the event of an emergency. The future depends on protecting those among us who are vulnerable. Their best hope is your training and skill as supporting public health responders. Terrorism, especially bioterrorism, has added new and alarming dimensions to our emergency preparedness needs. Potential targets identified within or close to Alameda County include the Bay Bridge, the San Mateo Hayward Bridge, the Oakland Coliseum Complex, Lawrence Livermore National Labs, BART tracks and stations, the Oakland International Airport, and the Port of Oakland. In addition, the FBI warns that any public buildings, shopping malls, schools, utilities, refineries, or chemical and nuclear research facilities may also be targets. The guidelines for your role in a response may vary depending on the exact nature of an event and its location. The mission of the Alameda County Public Health Department is to prepare the community to respond in a safe and timely manner in a bioterrorism threat, disaster, or other public health emergency. In other words, our role is to protect and maintain the public's health. This includes planning for distribution and dispensing of medical countermeasures from the Strategic National Stockpile. The Strategic National Stockpile is the nation's largest supply of potentially life-saving pharmaceuticals and medical supplies for use in a public health emergency severe enough to cause local supplies to run out. Since 2002, the Alameda County Public Health Department has been working with city, county, and other stakeholders on plans to respond as quickly as possible to preserve the health and prevent the spread of disease in the case of bioterrorism attack or other such public health emergencies. These plans are referred to as medical countermeasures, or MCMs. This video provides a high-level overview of MCM response. MCMs are life-saving medicines and medical supplies that can be used to mitigate threats. Activation of the MCM plan assumes that there is a suspected or actual release of biological, radiological, or chemical agents, a natural or man-made disaster, a disease outbreak, or other incidents requiring MCMs. The major functions to be carried out in a public health disaster requiring requests of MCMs include requesting MCM assets from the Strategic National Stockpile, or SNS, receipt, staging, and storing of assets, known as RSS, managing inventory, distribution, dispensing, public information, strategic and tactical communications, security, and of course, training, exercises, and evaluation. Requesting MCM assets will start at a local level with an emergency proclamation when officials identify a potential or actual problem that they believe will threaten the health of their community. The county health officer will activate the MOAC program, which stands for Medical Health Operational Area Coordination. The MOAC program staff will then follow the resource request process outlined by the California Public Health and Medical Emergency Operations Manual to request assets through the governor from the Office of Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, or ASPR. Once ASPR approves, two different types of shipments will ensue. 1. 12-hour push packages. SNS has multiple 12-hour push packages located around the country to facilitate meeting this timeline. 2. Managed inventory, sometimes abbreviated as MI. The majority of SNS assets are kept as managed inventory, which is held in storage sites managed by others. Upon receipt from ASPR, the state will immediately begin its RSS operations to deliver to the impacted operational areas those medications, medical supplies, and equipment that have been ordered through the request process described above. The state will deliver a portion of the SNS medical countermeasures by truck to the county's RDS site. If heavy traffic or road closures make delivery by truck difficult, the primary site has a suitable helicopter landing area. Alameda County's primary RDS site is at the Santa Rita Jail in Dublin. The primary site is secured and has local law enforcement on a continuous basis. The Sheriff's Office, or ACSO, will provide force protection for SNS operations at the primary warehouse level. The General Services Agency, or GSA, will assign employees through the logistics branch of the Emergency Operations Center, EOC, to the primary county RDS site to staff the warehouse on a full-time basis. Additional personnel assisting with RDS operations would undergo credentialing in an off-site location before being permitted into the RDS site. Once the RDS is activated and staff are notified to report to the RDS, team leads will be identified, given their job action sheets, and provided just-in-time training. Distribution of MCMs involves federal, state, and local partners. Assets will be received at secure warehouses, inspected and inventoried, and distributed to points of dispensing known as pods.
Alameda County will notify partners when the SNS has been requested and when to expect receipt so they may begin planning to activate their pod.
Dispensing is the most complex function in MCM response, as it requires considerations for how to provide MCM safely and efficiently to everyone in the county. Dispensing plans cover wide-ranging possibilities of MCMs and administration methods, such as oral medications or vaccinations. The Alameda County Public Health Department has worked with the incorporated cities within the county, treatment centers, hospitals, clinics, long-term care facilities, and large private organizations to develop a comprehensive pod network, including closed and open pods. Given the size and population of Alameda County, the Public Health Department has coordinated with cities to activate and manage facilities, volunteers, and provide oversight of non-medical functions like crowd control at the pods. During the initial stages of the incident, the Public Health Department will work with the cities and other pod partners to determine what pods will be activated and to provide security by local law enforcement. The Alameda County Pod Field Operations Guide, often referred to as the FOG or FOG, is designed to be used in a public health emergency where mass dispensing of vaccine or prophylactic medication is deemed necessary. This guide was extensively tested during Influenza A H1N1 in 2009. The Public Health Department is responsible for contacting the County Office of Emergency Services, or OES. The county OES will then contact city administrators to notify them of a public health emergency within their jurisdiction and the need to open their pods. Cities are responsible for notifying local staff and volunteers, including disaster service workers, Citizens Emergency Response Teams, known as CERTs, Medical Reserve Corps, known as MRCs, and other trained personnel. Each city will have its own procedure for notifying staff and volunteers through either an automated system or a phone tree. The Alameda County Health Officer, or a qualified designee, will work collaboratively with the Public Information Officers, known as PIOs, and the County Joint Information Center, or JIC. Together, they will coordinate health advisories and public information announcements in multiple languages. The Alameda County Sheriff's Department has the primary responsibility for the security of SNS assets once they are signed off to the county. The Sheriff's Department will develop a distribution security plan and will provide security for the delivery of SNS assets to pod sites and treatment centers. The Alameda County Sheriff's Department may request mutual aid as needed from local police departments or from the region or state. Safety and security of pod sites is critical for pod operations. Strategies for securing the pod site, along with access from the roads, will be of utmost importance and will be the responsibility of the city or pod entity, such as a university or business, in which the pod is located. Local and state health agencies provide various levels of training annually. Training will consist of seminars, workshops, webinars, website and satellite courses, drills, and exercises involving tabletop, functional, and full-scale exercises to test, document, and improve specific components of this plan. OES has developed a comprehensive training plan which includes Alameda County public health trainings and exercises. The established training schedule is included in the county's annual training and exercise plan. Training plans are also developed based on areas identified in exercises and learned from real-world incident after-action reports. Alameda County has developed a robust video training series that is available on YouTube at your convenience or for emergency needs. You can review a pod training overview or learn leadership and command, as well as the ICS functions of operations, planning, logistics, and finance and administration. Additional videos address vaccination pod training, detailing operations and logistics. For medical countermeasure distribution, the CDC recommends a 60-day course of prophylactic antibiotic therapy following exposure to anthrax. The distribution of the required antibiotics takes place in two distinct phases. The first phase involves the rapid dispensing of a 10-day supply of antibiotics to those individuals who were potentially exposed to anthrax. And a second phase, which is a targeted distribution providing the remaining 50-day supply to those who were truly exposed. Once epidemiological data is available, officials may be able to pinpoint the population that was most likely affected by the release and scale back dispensing operations utilizing fewer dispensing sites to target those who will need to continue prophylaxis for the additional 50 days. Depending on the nature of the incident, your dispensing campaign could last for months. With the incorporation of AVA and an enhanced understanding of the biological agent Bacillus anthracis, there has been a renewed focus on distribution and dispensing operations during a sustained anthrax response to ensure all forms of protection are provided and there is no lapse in post-exposure prophylaxis, or PEP, between the initial and secondary phases. MCM-related response efforts would include support of treatment, epidemiology, and completion and compliance of the recommended prophylactic course. Alameda County's MCM campaign is flexible to meet the needs of these multiple stages of dispensing. This diagram shows how Alameda County plans to implement an extended MCM campaign to include actions for the first 48 hours, rapidly dispensing the 10-day emergency regimen, followed by the period for dispensing the remaining 50-day regimen and the considerations for the administration of AVA vaccines throughout. This concludes the Medical Countermeasures Organization Overview. If you wish to continue, the next section details point of dispensing pod operations. An essential part of the medical countermeasure distribution process involves dispensing medicines or other essential survival support to large numbers of the population. The points of dispensing sites where this takes place are known as pods. City officials have the primary responsibility for all pods within their jurisdictions. Alameda County is responsible for any pods located in unincorporated areas of the county. Together, city and county officials have identified and evaluated many potential pod sites. While most cities in Alameda County have 1 or 2 pods within their city limits, some have as many as 7. Pods are generally set up at school gymnasiums and big auditoriums where large numbers of people can easily come and go. In the event of a public health disaster, you'll be notified by automated phone system, such as AC Alert, or phone tree if the phones are working. If not, you may need to listen to the radio, TV, or social media for instructions. As a pod worker, you may be asked to report immediately to a pod, or you may be requested to stand by. Pods will be open 24 hours a day and staffed in 12-hour shifts. Be prepared. When reporting to a pod, wear comfortable clothes and always bring your driver's license and work IDs along with any personal medications you might require over the course of the emergency. At the pod, you'll sign in and be given a role with duties explained in your job action sheet. Efforts will be made to fit your professional skills, but every role is crucial. You'll immediately be provided medication for yourself, and if take-home prescriptions are involved, additional medication for those in your household. Treating an entire urban community within a small time frame will require everyone to perform their duties quickly and efficiently. Why the rush? If a person is exposed to a deadly biological agent, such as anthrax, plague, or tularemia, their odds of survival are greatly improved if they receive protective medication before becoming symptomatic. The new packaging system used by ASPR puts all medicine on a single wrapped pallet as part of the same lot number. So we no longer have to break down or repackage every container or match lot numbers with individuals. If we know which pod a person received their medication, we will automatically know their lot number. This allows us to deploy full pallets of medical countermeasures much faster. This strategy of providing preventative medication to the exposed while still healthy is called post-exposure prophylaxis, or PEP. For PEP to be maximally effective, exposed persons need to be prophylaxed as soon as possible after exposure. Time is critical. In vulnerable individuals, symptoms may begin to appear as early as 24 hours. Simply said, the more people we prophylax in the shortest amount of time, the more lives we potentially save. A swift and aggressive prophylaxis campaign in our community has the potential to save hundreds of thousands of lives. Your participation as a mass prophylaxis responder can make a huge difference. But be aware that everyone participating in an emergency may need to change their normal operating procedures. The mission, getting medications to the masses, sounds simple, but in the event of a large release of weaponized anthrax across the county, we may need to prophylax the entire county population, citizens and visitors. In Alameda County, this means treating 1.7 million people in a little over a day. In a real event, energy and emotions will be running high. A balance must be sought between the time pressure and individual service. This is easy to forget, especially during drills, where cooperation and positive experience are more imperative than speed. So everyone must use their best judgment to expedite dispensing of medications while maintaining a reasonable standard of interaction with the public. The number one rule for all pod staff in a time-critical emergency is be positive and supportive, but always keep the line moving. Pod managers, section chiefs, group supervisors, and unit leaders should always be on the lookout for ways to improve bottlenecks and speed up flow. In the most extreme circumstances, authorities may choose to lift record-keeping requirements and move to a paperless model. Every person in an affected area must be given a bottle and begin taking the medication within the first 48 hours. Only those who have life-threatening allergies to ciprofloxacin or doxycycline should refrain. Instead, after reporting their allergy to medical consultation, they will be given a written prescription for alternative antibiotics, which should be filled and taken as soon as possible. At any point, anyone displaying signs of complications due to anthrax exposure should report to their local hospital. To recap, experts emphasize that the use of post-exposure prophylactic medical countermeasures in the first 48 hours following an anthrax incident is critical to saving lives. Current clinical recommendations for effective anthrax post-exposure prophylaxis include 60 days of oral antimicrobial drugs in conjunction with a 3-dose course of anthrax vaccine for all potentially exposed individuals. People should not skip or miss their scheduled daily dosage for the full 60 days. Pods will shift into a vaccination mode, which will require every individual to visit the pod. Depending on the event and availability, This may be concurrent with the 50-day supply dispensing. No matter what your role in the emergency response, you will be operating within the Incident Command System. ICS has 5 activities at work in the pod: command, operations, planning, logistics, and finance administrative support. Command is handled at each pod by staff under the direction of a site manager responsible for overall pod operations. The site manager is the primary on-site decision maker.
Pod site managers and their command staff will communicate beyond the pod to their city or county emergency operations center, or EOC, which will in turn communicate up the chain of command with operational area regional, state, and federal officials.
Local law enforcement will provide security and liaison with pod command staff. The Alameda County Sheriff will be focused on community-wide support and make officers available as needed. The remaining pod sections carry out the dispensing mission. Operations are the center stage of the pod mission. CERT volunteers or Medical Reserve Corps volunteers will mostly be assigned to jobs in the operations branch. Your role is crowd control and dispensing the medication. The planning section keeps ahead of pod operations by anticipating needs and problem solving in advance. The planning section monitors operations and reports to the pod site manager, and, if designated, to the city or county EOC and DOC officials. The logistics section manages personnel, supplies, and equipment. From medicines to clipboards, they'll make sure your station or area is supplied with everything you need. The finance admin section tracks and records everything. They're responsible for purchasing supplies and maintaining records of resources and personnel needed to keep the pod functioning. You might think of the pod as a public service business. It works in 2 phases: front of the house, where staff is dealing directly with the public, and back of the house, where staff is supporting the front of the house operation. In the front of the house, operations are teamed with planning. Operations carries out the critical mission of dispensing, while planning handles the paperwork and monitoring to support it. Behind the scenes, at the back of the house, logistics is teamed with finance. Logistics supplies the operation, and finance accounts for it. All of these sections work interdependently under the supervision of command. Keep in mind that the structure of a pod must be flexible. In some situations, not all pod positions will need to be filled for the pod to function. Now let's take a look at the pod from the public's perspective. The pod site has 4 basic flow tracks. Most people will go straight through the express track to receive doxycycline. Then there is the table track that distributes both doxy and Cipro for those who need to pick up a mix of medications. Then there is a family track for those with children needing pediatric suspension medications or crushing instructions to deal with swallowing difficulties. Finally, there is the assistance track for the small percentage of people with life-threatening complications requiring special medical attention or communication. The pod process is meant to be fast and simple. 4 easy steps. Fill out a form. Have it reviewed for life-threatening allergies or complications. Receive medication from the express, table, or family tracks, and turn in your form with name and medication listed together. And if you need special assistance, there are medical and communication experts, like translators, available to help. Admittedly, this simple flow can appear complicated when laid out to maximize space in a building, but the basic flow remains the same. From this point forward, we'll refer to the public as our clients, and we should try to treat them that way. The first person the public encounters is the greeter. They organize the crowd while generally watching for illness or emergencies that might negatively impact the flow. The greeter is the first part of the fill-out form station. Greeters need to monitor the whole line, not just the front. Walk up and down the entire line. One greeter should always be stationed at the very start of the line. The rest of the fill-out forms team includes flow control staff who hand out forms and ensure that clients fill them out before proceeding. If you encounter someone who's sick outside the pod, quickly separate them from the rest of the crowd. And don't send them into the pod, but get them to an outside medical team. If they're ill, they'll be transported to a healthcare facility for treatment. People may have a lot of questions. Always be reassuring, but try to refer them to signage or to printed material they'll receive further ahead. And then, if there's time, calmly answer their questions, but only if you're certain you know the answer and it will contribute to the flow. As early as possible, clients should be given antibiotic screening forms to complete. Clients may pick up medicine for other family members, but they'll need to complete screening information for each person. It's difficult to fill out forms while standing. Make sure you have more than enough pens and clipboards to stay ahead of the next station. That next station, show forms, is usually the first bottleneck in pod flow. The forms reviewer mission is to quickly check the screening form and direct people to the appropriate track. The top of the form is the doxy section. Most people will be given doxycycline, which will be indicated by all no answers in step 1. All no answers in step 1 will go right to the express track. A yes answer in step 1 means you continue to step 2 only for that person. Step 2 will determine if Cipro can be used for that person. All no answers in step 2 can go to the table track for a mix of medications. Forms are designed so that any risk will stick out. If there is a yes answer in the doxy questions, then they proceed to the second section of the form. If they answer all no's to the second section, they can receive ciprofloxacin. Other questions will screen for pediatrics and swallowing difficulties. A yes answer to any of these questions will be directed to the family track. The family track has both doxy and cipro along with pediatric suspensions. The special assistance track is only for those who, according to the form, are not medically eligible due to life-threatening allergic reactions from either doxycycline or ciprofloxacin. Forms are not perfect, and people may be tempted to choose answers overcautiously. Always confirm the reason for a flagged answer. Try to be efficient and fast, but most importantly, be accurate in directing people to the appropriate track. At the pickup medicine station, clients will be given their medicine and medicine for their families if appropriate. Adult dispensing is fairly simple, but pediatric medications can require more instruction. Since dispensing is the second likely bottleneck in the pod, delays at this station should be kept to a minimum. To keep the dispensing tracks moving fast, the assistance track is split off to the side into 2 service areas: medical consultation and special assistance. At medical consultation, a clinical healthcare provider can make necessary medical decisions, dispense medicine, and write prescriptions relating to the emergency. Here, sick patients will be evacuated to a healthcare facility. The final station in the assistance track is the special assistance area, a one-stop catch-all for any remaining concerns, both medical and otherwise. Its mission is to handle the problems other stations can't handle that might disrupt flow. Use special assistance sparingly. Each special case consumes extra time and resources. Candidates for special assistance include those requiring help with communication, mobility, or sensory impairment. Asthma attacks or panic attacks would go to special assistance. A language not included in the literature might need special assistance. But use common sense. Not all people in wheelchairs need or want special assistance. And just because someone speaks another language doesn't mean that they require translation services. Most clients will have a functional understanding of English that can be supplemented by printed material in their native languages available at the exit. So be diligent not to overwhelm the special assistance track. Depending on the disaster, mental health may also be a special assistance consideration. Psychological first aid can be as important as medical prophylaxis. Large pods usually have staff assigned to mental health. Typically, they're either roaming the pod or in the special assistance area. And while you're busy taking care of others, don't forget to take care of yourself. Take food and water breaks when scheduled, and remember your own regular prescription medications. You might also bring personal basics to have at hand, such as aspirin. No matter where you are in the pod, always do your best to communicate quickly and keep the lines moving. Remember that the plan described here addresses a typical anthrax scenario, but a point of dispensing pod is a useful system for many other types of public health disasters. So, to review quickly, greeters organize people as they arrive while forms controllers distribute forms and pens. Both are on the lookout for any emergencies, like ill clients, who should be taken out of line and assisted. Forms reviewers sort out the 1 in 100 or fewer special cases requiring assistance. Forms review staff should work fast and always be busy, since they often dictate the speed of the line and therefore the survival rate. Dispensing is the primary mission, so those handing out medications must work efficiently. Pre-bagged medications, signs, and printed materials help, but most important is teamwork. The assistance track, which includes medical consultation and special assistance, is meant only to supplement the dispensing operation. These services don't take the place of a family doctor or healthcare facility. The assistance track is primarily for the small number of clients whose health would be critically threatened by receiving medication normally through the express track. For everyone else, working on supplies, record keeping, planning, or support, the pod doesn't function without you. Everyone performs a key role in getting medication to the masses. And everyone affects the speed of the line. Always be reassuring, but keep the line moving, because speed equals survival. Advanced training for station leaders, command staff, and individual ICS sections is available in other modules. Your participation and continued training for public health disasters helps ensure that we're as ready as we can be when our citizens and our communities need us. This pod video series was brought to you by the Alameda County Public Health Department, Office of Public Health Emergency Preparedness, in collaboration with Applied Creative Training.